Today we're installing the Bixpy K1 motor on a kayak using the RailBlaza Hexx Adapter. We're very excited about this adapter. We've been working in conjunction with RailBlaza to develop a way to get our motor onto pretty much any kayak. So we've got lots of different adapters that are kayak specific. We do have some DIY and generic adapters. This one we're really excited about because any place where you can find about a 3-inch place to install this Hexx mount, you're able now to put your K1 motor on. The Hexx mount is basically a sort of a hexagonal shaped ball. It needs about a 3-inch clearance. You can put this on your tracks or on any flat surface on a kayak. So we're gonna go ahead and install this on a Vibe Seaghost because it's got tracks and it's got a flat surface. I'll show you how to install it. The beauty of the K1 motor is that just over 2.5 pounds, you're able to put this motor on an adapter like this because it's so lightweight and versatile. You can have this bow mounted or rear mounted or even in the middle if you have tracks running in the middle of your kayak. All right, I've got everything unpacked on the table, so I'm gonna run you guys through some of the main features of this adapter. You do need a Phillips screwdriver and something to cut your zip ties with, so I've got that here as well. Got the main Hexx mount from RailBlaza. We do have the mounting plate, and this can be configured to either be temporary and be removed with those 2 tabs, or you can have this permanently attached to there. We'll go through that as well. We do have our horizontal pipe that's adjustable. It'll go into that Hexx mount. We do have our zip ties and screws to mount the motor to our vertical pipe, and that's the Bixpy vertical pipe. I do have 2 options, steering options on the table as well. I do have our tiller steering that you can use to steer the motor like you would with a tiller. And I do have our pull steering option as well. These are optional, so you can add this to your adapter, or you can have the adapter fixed and use your rudder or whatever else means of turning you have on your kayak. First thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and put my K1 motor on my Bixpy vertical pipe. And there's lots of installation videos for this, so I'm gonna go through this quickly. We're gonna remove this middle piece here. That's the spacer you use for some of the adapters. We do want the groove on the pipe to be to the front, so we can run that cable up through there. We do have our nuts and bolts set here, and the longer bolts go in the front and the shorter ones in the back. All right, so we have our 4 nuts and bolts there. Guys, do remember there is a quick release for this. If you want to remove that motor from that pipe, this 1 nut and bolt will take that motor off and you'll be able to remove that and leave that moose horn attachment there. We're gonna run our pipe through there and use the zip ties that are provided to just secure it. And I'm gonna run this roughly halfway up this pipe because I already know on the kayak we're installing this and I need to be about 12 to 15 inches before I get into my kayak. So we're gonna do that and snip these off. So there it is, we have our motor on our vertical pipe. Now let's go ahead and get this plate onto the kayak and I'll show you guys how that's done in different configurations of that. So first we're gonna do the easy one. We're gonna put the Hexx mount onto this Vibe Seaghost. Now a couple of things to note here. We've chosen the Seaghost because the Seaghost does have a really nice flush track system on the back and in the front. So you can't do this on kayaks where the track mount is above the body because we need that kayak body to actually support this plate. From going sort of side to side. So it's really important that if you're doing this on a track system, you do it on a track system where the track is slightly below or flush with the kayak body, so you can use the kayak body to support that plate. We've got our plate ready. There's only one direction you can do this plate on. And the best thing to do is take your Hexx mount and put it on there, and you want your pipe going outward, obviously. So that is the direction we want to install this plate onto the track. So you want, when they're lined up, these 2 tabs lined up, you want to be able to put your hand through them like that. So we have our track bolts on the bottom here and nuts. So we're gonna just slide that on there and make sure we get some support from the kayak body on there. If you do come up further on this track, you'll see that the kayak body goes below the track, so you don't want to be mounting there, you want to be mounting here. And you want to get this fairly tight. Obviously, you're dealing with plastic, so you don't want to get into a situation when you're breaking your plastic or bending your track. So nice and tightened a couple of times. Half a turn there to make sure that's nice and tight. Now we can get our Hexx mount on there and clip it in on both sides. Once you've got your hex mount on, now you can get your horizontal pipe through there. Once you have that on, we're ready to get our motor on here. All right guys, now this is the easy part. All we're gonna do is get our vertical pipe with the motor on onto our horizontal pipe. What we do for that is open up these two nuts that are holding our down pipe together. That plate comes off, and I'm gonna put that motor right about that height. If you tighten these two nuts all the way, then what you'll do is you'll prevent your motor from turning. So if you do want to use steering with this, we'll talk about that later, and I'll explain also what these two clamps are for. If you do want to use steering, you don't want to tighten these all the way. You want to leave them loose enough so the motor and the vertical pipe can turn. Now the other way, which is really awesome because this truly makes this an adapter, universal adapter, you can mount this plate onto pretty much any flat surface you've got on your kayak. So here on the Sea Ghost, I do want to do a bow mount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that plate right there. I've got a nice flat area here, big enough to take the hex plate. So we're going to go ahead and install that right there. Now, as with the track, what we really want to make sure, first and foremost, is that once we have our hex mount on there, that the hole is pointing outwards so you can mount your motor off there. If you put that in the wrong direction, you're going to end up having that hole go parallel to your kayak, which you don't want to do. So we're going to position that right there, having the motor come out off the side. I'm going to remove that gently here, and then you'll see that what that requires is that the plate, you're able to put a straight line through those two green mounting holes. So I've got this sort of pattern on there now, and we're going to go ahead and mark those holes, drill those holes, and mount this onto here with the backing plate on the other side of the kayak. So what I've determined is that I want this plate on here, well, this is the backing actually, and I want it pointing forward. So I'm going to go ahead and place it where I want. I'm going to hold it really nice and tight and mark those holes. 1, 2, 3, 4. You really want to make those holes nice and centered because drilling this accurately makes your life much easier when you're trying to put the backing plate on. Now that I've marked it, I'm going to go ahead and drill those holes. But what I'm going to do, you need a 3/8 or a 10mm hole for this. What I'm going to do initially though is drill some very small pilot holes into the markings. It is very important that you get these holes nice and positioned properly. Otherwise it does become difficult putting that backing plate on properly. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that first hole with a small hole, just small pilot holes. And there we are. We have our pilot holes and we're ready to make that 3/8" or 10mm hole into those openings now. Right, once I get my two holes on the opposite sides, what I can actually do is check with this plate and see if those indentations will go through and if my hole is accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other ones. And I'm just, again, going to test this from the opposite side just to make sure these holes line up. And they do line up really nicely. So the important thing is to be able to get those into the indentations of the kayak. So you got a really nice secure plate from the other side. Once I have my holes drilled, I'm going to go ahead and put the plate from the other side and get this bracket onto the kayak. So what I'm doing here is I've got my 4 bolts in. I do have my backing plate from the other side. And I'm simply putting these bolts through and tightening them on the other side and making sure I capture my backing plate. You do need a couple of extra tools for this process, obviously, to get your mounting plate on to the surface. You need a drill and you do need a small wrench to hold the bolts from the other side. Now we've got our plate on, and next is our hex mount. Now, putting this on the body of the kayak is obviously much more sturdy than putting it on a track, but it does require you to drill some holes in your kayak and make that final decision on where that plate needs to be. While on the track, you obviously get to get it off, take it on and off. Just a side note, guys, we do have the hex mounted onto the kayak here with the base plate, like so. However, just wanted to show you guys quickly as well. if you wanted to replace those two green hand tightening bolts, what you can do is have a more permanent sort of a solution and just leave the plate there. You can actually bolt the hex mount to this plate using the nuts and bolts that are provided. Now, once you do that, there's a set of nuts and bolts. You will need a wrench to do this with as well. But once you do that, you can see I'm putting the bolts through. I won't need those green hand bolts anymore. Once you do that, however, this is a little more permanent on your kayak, so this part will stay on your kayak permanently. Well, not permanently, but you'll have to unscrew those bolts to get it off. So that is another option. It is a little more stable because you don't have to worry about those green hand bolts coming loose. And now we're ready to have our motor onto the kayak. So very simply, I'm clipping that motor in there, pushing it through, and I've got my stand in the way here a little bit, but you can see that I've got the motor on there. I can adjust where it is within from my kayak, and I can of course use that to pull the motor up and store it and put it out of the way. Now that we've got a motor in the front, motor in the back, I'm going to walk you guys through some of the features. Also show you guys how to install the steering on these two motors. On the back, we're going to do the tiller steering. On the front, we're going to do the pull steering. So you'll see how you can actually stand up in the kayak and steer the kayak from the front. All right, so now what we're going to do is go ahead and put our pull steering onto this vertical pipe. You'll notice a couple of things on this adapter. We do have two clips here. The first one, lower one, is to actually adjust the height of your motor and keep it there permanently. So that's your sort of height limiter. And then the other one is for our our pull steering system and our V-arm steering system. So I'm gonna go ahead and loosen those right now. So I'm gonna push this guy a little bit higher, so it's a little bit out of my way. And we do want our pull steering pointing into the kayak. So I'll put the opening on the other side, and you'll see in a second why that is. And then my height adjustment, I can just bring up, let's say I want to bring up the motor a little bit. Got these bolts tightened down, and I can bring that up a little bit, drop my height adjustment, and let's say that's the height I want. So I can lock that in now and have this locked in as my lowest position for the motor. Okay, so that's done. And now let's focus on that pull steering. I've got my pull steering here. We do have our zip cord that we use sort of as a guide and to hold it in place temporarily. So I'm gonna put that through. Now there is a full installation on this pull steering on our website, guys. So I'm just doing it sort of quickly to get through this right now. But there is a full installation video for this on our website that you can watch in more detail and sort of learn how to do this. All right, now we have our pull steering in place. We have our telescopic pull, and we're gonna go ahead and attach it there. This is one of the nicest ways to do steering on kayaks, I think, because you get to really just turn that motor 180 degrees without doing much movement on this pull. And it is also retractable, so you can sort of be standing up and steering your kayak from the bow. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and put the tiller steering on the motor in the back. And this time we're not gonna need to do anything with that clip. We're simply gonna just put that tiller steering on top. Now there is a right and a wrong way to do your tiller steering, and if you've done it the wrong way, you won't be able to fold it all the way back here nicely. So we've got it in the right way right now, and all it is are just two bolts on top here that you just gently hand tighten, and you've got tiller steering now on this adapter. And we're going to be able to swing that there, and that gets you your steering. And that's it. So now we've got two installations, one in the back, one in the front, and we have tiller steering and the pull steering on this kayak. Just to finish out this video and give you a couple of the highlights of this product, you want your motor deep enough, obviously not to create cavitation, but shallow enough that, you know, if it hits something, you don't want it to be really hard. There isn't really a kickback mechanism on this, aside from pulling this pin and swinging this up for storage. But if you do hit something, you know, this is gonna feel the impact. So you do want to be as shallow as you can. You can adjust that by loosening these and loosening that first clip and moving it up or down. This is sort of your limiter, basically. So if you do want to get the motor a little bit shallower, you can loosen that and tighten it down here. So that's one feature. The other feature, you will see a second clip here. That's for our pull steering, the installation that we already went through. Your tiller steering will fold and get to the back there. if you have it in the right direction, and it'll pull back and allow you to steer the motor. If you don't want to use any steering at all, you want to use your rudder or your paddle or whatever else, you can tighten these hand nuts and it is now locked in and it's not going to steer. And if it's fine totally that it's on one or the other side of the kayak, your kayak will still track straight, so you can use your rudder or any other means to steer your kayak. If you do have this set up near the center of the kayak, steering becomes really difficult, especially at the lower speeds, because your kayak is now just kind of pushing water aside to the side instead of actually turning. So if you do have it mounted near the middle of the kayak, you do want to use your rudder or some other form of steering. That's about it. If you guys have any other questions, hit us up. Full installation of all the other parts of this are linked below as well.